Okay, we can start probably. It's 1:20 already. Hi everyone, and welcome to the presentation or set of presentations about mainstreaming the artificial intelligence and data science, data analytics into the public policy making. We'll be walking through the labyrinth of different ways and approaches of pushing and promoting data-driven decision making in the public sector. I'd like to introduce you to the presenters for today's speeches. So I will be presenting the Armenia's case, and we'll be elaborating on some challenges and enabling factors for the government to use data-driven decision-making as a tool, as a main power for increasing the effectiveness of their policies and services to be delivered to the citizens. I'm representing UNDP Armenia country office. I'm leading the innovation and SDG finance portfolio, and simultaneously I'm leading the SDG innovation lab that has been co-founded by the UN and the government of Armenia. Luis Gonzalez from the UN Statistics Division and Victor Andres Arevalo Cabra from the government of Colombia representing DANE, which is the statistics office of the government of Colombia. They'll be speaking about the ways of gathering and analyzing the data for analyzing and showcasing the phenomena, social phenomena like discrimination. We will have Nicholas Grossman from Data for Development speaking about the introducing a new tool, Global Index on Responsible AI, focusing on data security, transparency, and explainability in more details. And Pek Sangyambut, representing Open Data Charter, who will be reflecting on approaches for improving data supply side for AI to solve development programs. So this is the list of presenters and the main topics for discussion today. So I'd like to start with telling you a story that will be linked later on to the main narrative of the presentation that I'd like to make. There was mid of 1990s, closer to the end of 90s, when the first time a British journalist walked into the Kremlin to take an interview from the president of Russian Federation, Boris Yeltsin. And at that time, the economy was like devastating, like it was collapsing in Russia. And he was walking through these long corridors of Kremlin to reach to the hall where he needed to take the interview from Boris Yeltsin. And the first question he asked was, can you please describe the Russian economy in one word? To which Boris Yeltsin replied, good. Okay, he was telling, okay, I mean, all of us know that it's marking down. So how can it can be good? Okay, maybe the problem is with the question. Can you describe the Russia's economy in more than one word? He said, not good. So there is data and there is information, there are insights that we are getting, not only from the data, but through our everyday life. We're in contact with our fellow citizens, with the government officials, with many people dealing with policy making. And there are several factors, number of factors that are influencing on the quality of the data and insights we're getting for policy making. And there are factors like connecting us to the nature of us being human being. Like we have our own psychological biases, we have our own fears, we have our own practices of decision making. So there are a lot of factors influencing on how we make the decisions and to which extent we're inclined to take the data as part of decision making practices. So going forward, with already presentation of the cases. So these are the data benefits every one of us knows, so we can complement it with a lot of other data benefits that we're using during the decision making in the government, like evidence-based policy making is the first one that comes into mind, which has many layers and dimensions. The performance management, resource allocation, which is one of the core topics for the data-driven decision-making, and because there is no data-driven decision-making, there is no data infrastructure, I mean, there is no data analytics in case if we don't have the resources to be allocated for that reason. The risk management, service delivery, predictive modeling, a lot of our other benefits that we are getting when using data for policy making, service design, and service delivery in the government. But on the other hand, there are a lot of challenges on the way we can use the data for that reason. And here you can see some challenges. Again, very common challenges that have been discussed during the many presentations in the frame of this World Data Forum, fourth one, like the lack of relevant data. So we could see the many experiences during the COVID times when the governments had hard time to analyze the data because of the lack of relevant data. In many cases, we have like abundance of data, but the data is not clean, the data is not standardized, it's not usable for data-driven decision-making right away. So we need to do something with it. The governments had really faced many difficulties in tracking the disease, in hospitalization, in measuring the mortality rates, and linking those figures with each other so that to make the policies real time. So we have the quality and interoperability and accessibility problem with the data. And again, here we have a lot of examples, like in the US, Los Angeles city tried to use predictive modeling for policy making in the policing, in the community policing sector. And people started complaining about the biases of the data, about the quality of the data, and the program has been suspended with push and with the press by the citizens. And there are a lot of other examples. The limited analytical capacity. So here we're working with the government of Armenia a lot. We're developing a lot of data analytical tools. I will be presenting at a later stage. Like in tax administration, with the police, with the Ministry of Education, with the Ministry of Economy, a lot of them we have already developed, and some of them are being pushed already for policymaking purposes. The limited resources, all of us are facing this issue of having limited resources for pushing the data-driven decision-making again. And here we have the institutional restrictions, we have infrastructural restrictions, we have capacity-related restrictions, especially when it comes to the human capacity to find out those data scientists that are specialized in using data for the decision-making in the public sector, and many other lack of resources like financial resources, which comes as a result of poor acknowledgement of the importance of data in decision-making. Like political interference, of course, all the governments have their political agendas. And what if they don't have the evidence-based decision-making as one of their higher priorities? And this is a common problem for all the countries. We have the politicians speaking about evidence-based decision-making all the time. But what we see in reality is lack of evidence-based decision-making. Is decision-making based on assumptions, based on their political priorities, and not the pain points that our citizens, that the citizens are complaining about, that the citizens feel and citizens live in. And these are the challenges that we see always and we talk about. But there are challenges that we miss sometimes, and in most of the times. This is related to the institutional capacity to absorb data-driven decision-making practices because of all those historical practices of decision-making that we have faced. so far. The organizational culture, how the decisions are being made. Is there any culture of collaboration? Are the decision makers, like high-level top officials, they have the ability for deep listening? Do they have the ability to consider the collective intelligence as one of the means of getting insights from the citizens? Do they really intend to listen to their citizens, or they would like just to push their political agenda? The lack of collaboration, the risk aversion. So to which extent the governments or top officials are ready to go for risk of experimentation? Because experimentation is leading sometimes to failure in their terms, but learning in our terms. So it leads to learning. You cannot learn if you don't fail. You cannot learn if you don't experiment. And you cannot experiment if no resources are allocated for experimentation, and if the organization's internal culture is not fostering experimentation. So in many cases, there are lack of incentives for experimentation, and the failures, mistakes, everyday mistakes, which we all make, all the judges make, all the doctors make, everyone makes mistakes. How the government treats to those who are making mistakes. In many cases, probably in developing countries, especially in all of the cases, people are being punished for making mistakes. That is the main reason why they would like to not make mistakes, or at least not to speak out about the mistakes, which limits the capacity of learnings. And if you don't have the learnings, you don't have the policy making rested, anchored on the evidences. And here comes the data as part of the evidence, which is kicked out from the decision-making practices, because we don't have this innovative culture of decision-making. People are not making mistakes or not speaking about it. People are not learning from that. And the top-level officials think that whatever they say, that is the right decision. Whatever they think is the problem, that is the real problem, without even getting out from their offices, without even engaging the beneficiaries to learn about their pain points. So this is a common practice in all the developing countries, including Armenia. And this is why we have changed our own strategy of dealing with the problems with the government of Armenia. So this is why we have shifted the priority of the SDG Innovation Lab to start working with the government, starting from the scratch of decision-making practices, and not just pushing the data-driven decision-making practices, like not pushing the data analysis at all means, because in that case, we will have no data-driven decision-making at all. We will have abundance of data analytical tools, but with lack of capacity, lack of willingness to use the data, to use the insights for decision-making. And the enablers, again, there are the standard enablers that we are talking about in all the conferences. The open data policies and partnerships, which are again very important. So not to dismiss the importance of those enablers and the challenges that we have faced, but traditionally, like the interoperability, data analytical platforms, the digital transformation with whole of government approach. So these are something that is indispensable, but is not enough for pushing evidence-based decision-making. And what we miss is innovative capacity of the public sector, the institutional structures, promoting the procurement, the allocation of resources, the learnings, experimentation, collaboration. This should be part of decision-making practices before we develop those data analytical tools and presenting to the government, so that they have the ability, the absorption rate of the data, and enabling environment for public sector innovation, like the spaces for experimentation, like the innovation labs. We will need the innovation lab in case if the government is ready to absorb it. The collaborative partnerships, agile methodologies, user-centered design, the behavioral insights, and this is all that are being used now by the SDG Innovation Lab in Armenia, and we have and we could reach some success in pushing forward reforms, starting from standalone projects to transformative projects that I will speak about. So SDG Innovation Lab is operational already for 5 years, trying to mainstream those innovative approaches of evidence-based decision-making and service delivery into the public sector of Armenia. And the SDG Innovation Lab is positioned ideally for this purpose because it has been co-founded by the government of Armenia and the UN Office of Armenia. So we have co-ownership of those two main institutions that are pushing reforms in the public sector. Two main directions that we're targeting: public policy and the public service. And we are covering the whole cycles of the starting from the design to implementation and evaluation, to showcase what works and what doesn't, to learn from our own experiences, to learn from our own mistakes, because we acknowledge we are making those mistakes. So we have done so far 25 projects with 18 donors in 13 sectors. We're partnering with all the ministries of Armenia throughout all the sectors in the government within those 5 years. And we are doing it through 4 service lines. Like initially, we had those 2 service lines you can see up front: the data science and digital transformation, building data analytical tools for the government to get the insights out of it and to incorporate into the policies or to drive the policies, to automate internal processes of the government, like to increase the efficiency of the operation. And then we have done a lot of projects there, like automating certain tasks that people were doing manually. Digital transformation, starting from digitalization of certain services to complete transformation of institutions to be able to transform themselves and to provide digital services themselves. And we could reach those because of 2 other service lines that we have. Design thinking, which is the main means for user-centered design of all the products that we have with the government, be it policies, services, or any other product. Like it can be a workshop even, but the workshop should be tailored to those citizens, to the audience that is participating to this workshop, to get out with all the KPIs at the end, with the expected results. But we need certain tools and methodologies to be applied for that reason. Like what we start with in all the projects is the assumption testing. We're sitting with the major stakeholders, our team, etc., and writing down all the assumptions about the problems, about the objectives, about the goals. Those are our assumptions. It doesn't matter whether we have these assumptions based on reports, based on different types of evidences, but these are our own assumptions unless we are testing it, unless we're validating it with the beneficiaries and all the stakeholders. And to our surprise, more than 50% of all those assumptions by experts, by us, by the government top-level officials who know everything, more than half of it is becoming just a useless assumption because they don't they are not succeeding the validation period. So we are changing the whole concepts of problems and the solutions together with the government, the beneficiary stakeholders together, and they are getting the ownership of this evidence, and they are anchoring their decisions based on the new evidence they have got together with us. And the behavioral science, of course, this is one of the most important ones. Again, we have many psychological biases, like the following the social norm. Like if majority does one thing, the others will do the same. Or if you showcase this to the audience, to the society, they will follow the rule. So we are using the behavioral insights to get the behavioral barriers on certain topic, on certain problem, to guide their behavior from one point to another. And it works perfectly. We have done behavioral experiments to guide the policy making in preventive healthcare sector, and we could increase the participation in a cancer screening program by 600%, more than 600%, with sending out just one letter to the citizens. So we have increased the tax compliance, like tax declarations among small and medium companies through sending out one email to those SMEs. We have increased the tax compliance by more than 10%. So millions of dollars were just benefited to the state budget after sending this one email. So, but the team has worked from 6 to 8 months to send out this one email to each of the SMEs. I would like to present a few of our data analytical tools for your reference. One of them is travelinsights.ai, which collects data from the reviews of tourists that have left in major touristic platforms and websites like TripAdvisor, Booking.com, in pages of Facebook.com. So we're collecting in real time all the data, analyzing the data with time series analysis, with NLP, natural language processing tools, and many other models that we are using. And we have our custom data sets using for our purposes that showcases the sentiment, the insights out of those reviews based on sentiment analysis and topic classification. We have 27 aspects, and we have 2 main sentiments, whether people are complaining and complimenting about what they have experienced in Armenia. So this is guiding the policy making in the tourism development sector in Armenia to get to use the positive insights for marketing purposes and to take the negative insights for changing the priorities of the tourism sector policies. We can elaborate more on later on one-on-one basis. To save the time, I'll pass on to the other platform, which is called the Edu2Work, which is rested on the data gathered from online job postings in Armenia and analyzing different aspects of it in granularity, like what occupations are the most demanded ones in Armenia, what are the skills that are most demanded, the interlinkages between the occupations and skills, the required experience, working experience by the labor market, the required educational level by the labor market. So this helps the government, the Ministry of Education, Ministry of Economy, to guide the decision making in the labor market and in the educational sector. Like even the universities get understanding about the connections between the curricula and the skills that are required for the certain profession by the labor market to change, to adapt their curricula with the skills that are required by the labor market. And this is a very important and useful guiding tool for the citizens, regular citizens who are at the threshold of their career choice, making their career choice. And the government recently has been using this tool to redistribute the allocation of financial support to the institutions for scholarships. So initially, they have provided the scholarships like based on the inertia coming from like the decisions 20, 30 years ago that they have made, like the distribution according to professions. And they had no evidence to showcase why they are like financing, preparing specialists in one sector and not the other sector. And this tool has helped them to understand the real demand from the labor market, to channel the financing to all those professions that are in demand currently. And a few other tools like the road safety tool that we have developed, which is a cross-sectoral project we're doing with different ministries in Armenia. This is the MVP, minimum viable product, that we have developed. This is the prototype of the product that we are now starting to develop in full-fledged, that uses the data from different data sets, databases, administrative databases, and this is already using the databases in the administrative data sets in the government of Republic of Armenia, unlike the other 2 tools that are using the publicly available data. So we are using the data on the drivers, on the roads, on cars, and on crashes and accidents on the road to identify the black spots. Those are the spots where the most crashes are happening with fatalities, to identify the most trends, to analyze the road user behavior even, and to have the geospatial visualization of all the accidents throughout Armenia. So it's a quite useful tool right now in Armenia to decrease the level of accidents, to decrease the level of fatalities on the roads, because Armenia has horrible statistics on this. And this has been prioritized by the government, again, using the design thinking and behavioral science techniques. And another tool I would like to introduce is the analytical dashboard for the police, which is combining data from 9 different databases, including those arms, vehicles, investigations, etc., to provide some very basic analysis. But on top of them, we are doing some complex analysis like criminal network analysis, providing interlinkages between individual criminals to identify for the police to which extent they are linked to one another and to which extent there is likelihood of organized crime with participation of all those who have been historically associated with criminal cases, and criminal profile analysis for all the citizens, etc. So there are a lot of very important and useful insights that are coming out of all those tools that we're developing for the government of Armenia. So I'd like to stop here when it comes to the SDG Innovation Lab, and you can approach me anytime for getting more information and insights about the work that we are doing. But again, I would like to finish my presentation with the notion, with the emphasis of building innovative capacity of the government before we're trying to push data-driven decision-making so that they can get ready to absorb the data-driven decision-making at the end. Because otherwise we will end up with a situation when we have very fancy tools but with no usage. So with this, I would like to pass the floor to my colleague, Luis Gonzalez from the UN Statistics Division, and Victor Andres Arevalo Cabra later on to introduce the case of Data for Now project that has been conducted, including in Colombia. Please.
Thank you so much, Tigran. I will not take a minute from your time, just to thank for the opportunity to join the session and share a bit the broader context behind this Data for Now initiative, which has enabled a truly fruitful collaboration between UNDP Armenia, National SDG Lab, DANE-Colombia, and the Statistics Division. This is an initiative that continues to support a growing number of countries in the use of innovative sources, technologies, and methods to streamline the production and dissemination of more timely, more disaggregated, more usable data for sustainable development. So this initiative, and I think you've been meeting some use cases on some applications developed in this throughout this forum. This initiative was launched in September 2019 by our Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed, and it is co-led by the United Nations Statistics Division, the World Bank, the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development Data, and the Sustainable Development Solutions Network. So this initiative aims to increase the use of robust methods, technologies, new data sources to improve data for decision-making at the country level, not in practice. And with the general support of donors from partners, UNDP, Data for Now is mobilizing technical expertise from across the data community to provide training, technical advice, and to exchange experiences with national statistical offices and other members of the national statistical systems in areas that have been prioritized by their own policymakers. This is what I really wanted to emphasize today, that the starting point is the needs of policymakers, and then from there, we work with the countries, with our partners, develop solutions that address precisely those needs. So we emphasize country ownership, sustainability of the solutions, scalability of the solutions as guiding principles, and how we design and execute all these activities, very much in line with what was presenting, this approach of being agile, being able to experiment, to learn, to iterate. And I would like to express our sincere appreciation to UNDP, Armenia SDG Innovation Lab, and for responding to this invitation to join the Data for Now initiative, to work with us and the amazing colleagues at DANE, sharing their technical expertise, dedication, and also take the opportunity to invite other members of the national statistical systems, of the local, national, global partners from intergovernmental organizations, from academia, from civil society, from the private sector, to join us and support this initiative to deliver improved data availability and to improve the use of data for sustainable development. With this, I pass the floor to our colleagues from DANE, who will present the experience working with us and with the UN. Thank you.
Victor, you're on air already, so you can start. Victor, if you can hear us, you're muted. Can you please unmute yourself?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, it's great. You can continue.
Okay, thank you. Okay, just mention that for me it's an honor to stay here with you in this event. I just want to mention very quickly our experiences with NLP models, in particularly for the production of statistical information. And first and foremost, I want to thank to the different partners for the Data for Now initiative in Colombia, and especially the Armenian National SDG Innovation Lab, who was our technical partner in the development of the NLP models for one of the projects that we developed in the Data for Now initiative. We work in 4 areas, but in this presentation, we only focus on the SDG 16 project. But all of these projects were very important for us, especially the project for cross-cutting areas, because it gives us an IT architecture and data management that was the base for the other projects. So the origin of this project in terms of the DANE needs was the data gaps that we have identified in the policy document called Compass 3918 of 2018 that implement the 2030 agenda in the country. So in that document, 2 indicators of the SDG 16 were identified as a data gaps, the indicator 16.7.2 and the indicator 16.B.1. And also the Compass document fostered the use of alternative sources to fill those gaps. So we see an opportunity to calculate complementary information for those indicators and also use alternative sources and techniques to improve the data availability in the country. So especially for the SDG 16 indicator, we use NLP models and we use different kinds of analysis. We use an unsupervised analysis using some of the models that in this moment are very popular, and with this old boom of the artificial intelligence models. We use an zero-shot model classification. We developed some topic modeling analysis. We made an sentiment analysis as well, and we use hate speech models. The first one was the base for the analysis in Facebook data, and the other one were used to check and validate the information for the first one. The supervised analysis gives us the opportunity to get the human knowledge with some labeling task in order to optimize the model that we develop in the first step. And we have additional context information gathered from Google News. So you can see here and in the next slide the result of the project. We have a proxy indicator of the two indicators, the indicator 16.B.1 and the indicator 16.7.2. And in the little table upside, you can see the performance metric for the models. In one case, one um, metric better than the other one. In one case, more accurate than in the other one, but we have this information, and we compare this information with the official data that DANE produced for those two indicators. So based on the model that we use and the data that we use for this exercise, we identify some challenges when we develop these models, especially with the collection and processing phases. And of course, the representativeness of the data was one of the key challenges in our project. And we consider that despite of that, this social media data could be used as a complementary or contextual data information. But the most interesting thing for us is the techniques that we learn in this project could be used for some other steps of the statistical production. So in this moment, based on that experience, we have some new projects uh, that try to resolve some challenges in DANE. For example, you can see here the total amount of complaints and petitions for DANE for 2021, for 2022, and 2023. For 2021, we have approximately 114 complaints and petitions by day. So it's a lot of information. So the question here is if it's possible for DANE to have a more a precise and accurate way to manage this very huge volume of information. And we think we can standardize some of the answers that we give to the data users regarding these petitions, and we think we can make that using some of the models we learn in the Data for Now initiative. For example, some deep learning models that allow us to analyze the information of these petitions. And the base of that is create a virtual assistant. This virtual assistant also could help us for other issue in our institution. The surveyors in the work field must solve concerns in real time associated with different difficulties and problems in field and in real time. So in some cases, it is very difficult to have an answer for the coordinator or for the other partners because the very huge distances in the country. So, and in other cases, no internet connection is available in the country. So we think we can generate some kind of virtual assistants based on these large language models. And we think it's feasible to create this virtual assistant in field that help to surveyors to resolve any doubt and concerns and questions regarding the work in real time. Other project that we have in this moment ongoing is the possibility to analyze some interlinkages between SDG indicators using text mining and semantic approaches. The idea here is to try to identify at a text mining level what are the possible relations between the indicators. So we think we can build some kind of multi-layer analysis, and the base of this analysis is the text mining and semantic approaches, but we think we can improve this analysis again using large language models like BERT or like transformers. Other projects that we have into consideration are the use of small area estimation to estimate household-based indicators at subnational level. We don't have information at municipality level for the indicators that you can see in the slide. So we think we can obtain information at that level using satellite imagery. But for that, we need to study and see if it's possible using small area estimation. And we think we also can estimate the indicator 7.1.1 related to access to electricity, again, using satellite imagery. So based on that, we think it's important in terms of public policy and decision making to align the different government requirements for the data availability, especially at subnational level. Some of these projects are based on the current government needs and also the current DANE needs in terms of how we can improve our internal process. For some other projects, especially for the projects derived from Data for Now initiative, we think it's important to have a more precise follow-up in order to disseminate the results for the data users. And in that sense, it's very important to share the methodology with our stakeholders or with the data users in order to receive more fruitful feedback from them. It's also important for us to identify some links between the current national development plan and the possibility to get more accurate measurements of the advances of this plan. And we think we can obtain that using some of the insights that we receive for some of these projects. And the disseminating different scenarios of the results of the projects could be very useful, not just for DANE, but also for the data users. For example, the country will have elections in October, and we think that some of this exercise could be a very interesting way to foster the data-driven decision making for the future elected mayors and governors. So, taking into account that these projects raised and have its origin in data gaps needs identified in public policy, it makes sense that the results of the project could be the base for the data-driven decision making in the future development plans for these elected mayors and governors. So if you want more information of our experiences with Data for Now initiative, you can consult the websites that you can see here, and of course, the website of DANE. That's all for my part. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Victor. For the presentation, I would like to appreciate the presentation of not only Victor, but also for all two other our presenters, because they are based in the Western Hemisphere and it's in the middle of the night, like 3 a.m. For our colleagues there. So thank you for staying with us at this very late hour. Now I would like to move forward with Pek Sangyambut, who is going to talk about the needs assessment and availability about the data, need for collaboration and partnerships to leverage and synchronize the data opportunities for decision making. Please, Pek, you're on air. Sorry, 1 minute. You're muted. Can you please
well?
check if? Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Please, you can start.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for making it to today's session. I'm here to talk a bit about a project that we at the Open Data Charter are doing, funded by the International Development Research Center in Canada. So the Open Data Charter, we're very much focused on, we're a network and we're focused on collaborations to promote open data policy. We're a network of over 170 governments and experts working around the world. The charter itself stems all the way back to a G8 meeting on open data, and we have been continuing the advocacy and push for open data around the world ever since. Some of you may have heard about some of our 6 principles of open data. These are principles that formal government adopters sign up to when they sign up to the charter. So today, I'd like to talk a bit about data needs in AI projects. We're really driven by 2 major questions in our current project. What kind of data needs can we identify in the application of AI to development issues? And what general ecosystem or the data pipeline challenges are we uncovering as a result? In our project, we focused on 2 main domains, and this has been around healthcare and agriculture. And it's primarily an exploratory study, quite inductive. We're identifying case studies, also identifying use cases in literature, validating this through surveys and interviews with project implementers on the ground. So this has resulted in some fairly rich data on data needs, also structural needs regarding formatting and data collection processes, as well as some insights into contextual challenges for people operating in the global south who want to or are engaged in AI projects. What kind of challenges are they facing? So AI in agriculture, I'll keep this fairly brief, but what we can identify when we think about agriculture is primarily cases or use cases of disease identification and crop yield estimation. Very popular approaches at the moment are the use of remote sensing as well as imagery to try to count or try to get an estimate of crops in a given area. And when it comes to handheld cameras, for example, the use of images, we're seeing a lot of use of computer vision techniques here that are using transfer learning as well to identify instances of specific diseases. Now, what we're seeing that there's a lot of different projects on the ground, and these can be focused on different crops, ranging from maize to cassava. And individual projects are really building their own training data sets. There's at the moment quite a few training data sets out there that are being posted by individual projects. And it's difficult to find centralized and maintained repositories. So repositories might be focused on a specific kind of crop, and there might be an institution that is focused around collecting data on a specific crop, but other crops may be left out, for example. And that presents to us some infrastructural or ecosystem challenges when it comes to data policies to promote the use of open data for AI. So At the same time, publicly available training data also has its own limitations. So at the moment, what we're seeing on the ground is coverage can be quite limited to specific regions and crop species, whereas diseases themselves may not be universal. So developing a global database of diseases for cassava, for example, may be quite a challenge. At the same time, the challenges for data collection may also be very hyperlocal and hypersensitive to daylight conditions, angle, aperture, the types of sensors used. And that poses even more challenges for maybe bigger institutions that are looking to support local AI practitioners who need actually not just perfect data, but also data that can be maybe a little imperfect or matches imperfect conditions. At the same time, transfer learning we've seen instances of transfer learning used. So this is where models are trained on maybe a generic data set, like ImageNet, and is then applied to a specific domain. And there are still challenges with that. These types of approaches actually still require a certain level of validation. And validation means more human labor, more extra data collection, and more costs. In the realm of health, another very popular or up-and-coming area of application is AI for disease surveillance. So what are we doing when we're doing disease surveillance? Well, we need to build a model of potential outbreaks of a specific disease. We need to know where people are, and we generally need to know where people might be in the future. And that can lead us to rely on certain kinds of primary data like demographic data, surveys, census data. And when we think about the underlying data sets that we want to use for disease surveillance, looking into existing disease surveillance systems, we actually uncover quite a challenge of temporal resolution that mismatches the needs at a project level. So, for example, there are a number of applications.
If you can hear me,
Yes.
I'm very sorry. It's very, very much interesting. But due to time limitations, I would like to ask you to sum up the presentation. So
Okay,
to allow
sure.
the presenter
So,
to have.
thank you. So in the realm of disease surveillance, what we're also uncovering in some of our research is that baseline or foundational data sets being used also don't necessarily match the temporal frequency that you need. So when we talk about AI and the application of AI, we really need to go down into the data that we need and question whether or not that meets our needs. So just to sum up our challenges that we're uncovering in our research project right now, what we would like to see right now is a greater focus on specific data needs at the ground level that are being faced by AI practitioners, because not all training data that is generated in one place matches the needs in another place. There are project level challenges as well, dependencies on external data systems, or such as census or surveillance systems, which can result in mismatches in the timeframes of data that you need. And finally, I think we want to also remember that we're also dealing with continued challenges of cloud computing, bandwidth, access, even access to electricity, which can, of course, very much be an impediment to local AI practitioners looking to work on development projects. So a few challenges there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Beck. It was quite exciting to hear the ways of integrating different data sets into analysis for other purposes. Thank you so much. Let's move forward with the last presenter, Nicholas Grossman, who will shift the focus on the responsible AI on the ethical side of using the data. Please, Nicholas.
Hello, everybody. Can you listen to me properly?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. First of all, it's a pleasure to meet you all, and it's a pleasure to be in this session today. I will be brief because I know we are almost on time. Can you tell me if you can't see my screen, the slide deck?
Yes, we can see it. Thanks.
Great. So yeah, as we have heard from our colleagues, artificial intelligence is already being used to advance work done towards SDG, to inform public policy, and to improve government's response to demands and inquiry from citizens. That's a fact, and we have seen in this presentation and all around the world very promising and very valuable uses of AI to solve public problems. And we have to be aware that these steps forwards on the use of AI towards public good should be also accompanied with the acknowledgement that the development and implementation of AI system can also pose risk to democracy and human rights. And this is also particularly important when we are talking about collaborations of different actors, private sector, public sector, civil society, etc., and to think how are going to be shaped and govern these collaborations to use data and deploy artificial intelligence for public good. So this is why I would like to share with you some information on the new project, which is called the Global Index on Responsible AI, which address these pressure topics of responsible AI. So this is a new project led by Data for Development Network, funded by the RDRC and led by the South African think tank Research ICT Africa to support the efforts on advancing a global agenda on responsible AI. So I would like to share with you some of the main components of this project that we think are going to be very valuable to contextualize the effort and the uses of data and AI for public good. Some of them we have seen very interesting today. So the main objective that we have with this project is to measure the evolution of commitment and progress on the implementation of responsible AI principles and practices on a country level. So we are going to ask, do the conditions exist to support and promote responsible AI at the country level? And we are also asking with this study, what does progress look like? Can we track it over time? So we have more specific objectives of the index, and which chronologically are first to establish systematized human rights-based benchmarks for responsible AI. And doing so, we were exploring more than 100 frameworks and principles that has been developed in the last few years from different institutions. With those benchmarks, we are going to assess country conditions to support and promote responsible AI in over 120 countries. And with all that evidence, we are going to provide evidence to decision makers around the world to advance the responsible use of AI and to promote digital inclusion. And ultimately, this will realize principles through implementation, evaluation, and accountability. So one of the first things that we have to do if you're going to measure, if you're going to assess responsible AI, is to define this concept. And as I mentioned before, we have scanned more than 100 documents talking about responsible AI, their policies. They are one of the main ones is the UNESCO recommendation on the ethics of artificial intelligence and also the OECD principles on AI. But there are a lot of many others that you can review in our website and how we have operationalized. So to measure this concept, we have split the concept of responsible AI into 4 dimensions, which they are human rights and AI, responsible AI governance, national responsible AI capacities, and responsible AI environment. And these dimensions are also split into sub-dimensions. The first 3 dimensions of the index are going to be measured by primary data. This means that our researchers are going to collect the evidence and assess it. And this evidence is going to be mainly made of government frameworks, government actions, and non-governmental actor activities that we are going to be tracking and assessing all around the world. So this is a huge exercise of collecting and assessing data. And
dear Nicholas, I'm very, very sorry. It's not your fault, but we have time limitations.
Oh,
Can you please go a little bit faster because we have like 2 more minutes at the maximum.
2 more minutes. Okay, so
Sorry.
to wrap up, this is a huge study whose global survey with more than 120 countries is composed by a global research network, which is composed by what we call the regional hubs, which are civil society, university, and different organizations with a lot of knowledge on the topic in the regions. So they are going to be coordinating 120 researchers around the world to inform and to build this index. All the information on the data, on all the evidence collected by the index is going to be open. So stay tuned because by the end of this year, we're going to be collecting the data, and early next year, we're going to be releasing the reports and also the open data so everybody around the world could see which are the main frameworks regarding responsible AI, what are governments doing, and what are other actors than government doing toward responsible AI. So to wrap up, a very brief comment that we think this kind of exercise are very useful to think and to provide evidence and to explore how AI is reshaping the ecosystem in which data is collected, used, and created. So there are new challenges when using data for AI, and our tool is going to provide evidence and new knowledge to handle it in a better way.
Thank you so much, Nicholas, and my thanks goes to all the presenters for this session. Very timely presentation in the era of ChatGPT and many other models that are being released. Thank you so much for being here together with us. So we have our contact details on the website of Huova, so feel free to contact anytime to me or other presenters today. So we'll provide you the information requested. Sorry, we don't have time now for the question and answer session, but again, we will be open for your questions on one-on-one basis. Thank you so much. See you.